we're going to be discussing Saucha. Does anybody have in their notes what Saucha is? Cleanliness. Also purity, the first Niyamas. We've advanced. And then we're also going to be discussing austerity, which is tapas. So I think those are two good ones. You know what I really like about the Yamas and Niyamas? For people who are new, so we're doing basically a round of sessions called the Foundations of Yoga. And we're talking about what the foundational qualities of a yogi are and the principles that a yogi adheres to. And they're given in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and they're called the Yamas and Niyamas. And then we're actually going to bring in some other things, but these guys, last day, are going to miss it. But next week we're going to be talking more about Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, which is, anyone remember what Jnana is? Wisdom. So Jnana Yoga is the yoga of wisdom, and we're going to talk about that more in a few weeks. But today, Saucha and Tapas, cleanliness, purity, and austerity. But before we do that, why don't we just have some brief introductions? So most of these people know each other, actually, but a few of us don't. So maybe we could just say our name, where we're from, and what brought us to class today.
I don't know, I feel called to yoga, but I know nothing about it, so I don't feel a connection to it yet, and I want to feel that, so I'll actually do it. So I thought this would be a good beginning to that.
Yes.
I am Annelien. I'm from Holland, and I'm doing a teacher yoga training by Mimi, and this is one of our classes. So in the beginning, yoga was only a workout for me, and I think that is for now the same, but a little bit different, because it's all over the place at the moment. So that's why I'm here.
That's amazing. All right. So how is it a little bit different?
Because I know that it is 12% only physical, and the rest is all in your head, and breathing, and that's what you're gonna learn from Pia.
That's a good start, though, right? That's a great start to your yoga career.
I'm Ashley. I am from Washington State in America, and what brought me to class is also Mimi's yoga teacher training, but what this class has done is like, ooh, you know, it's pretty cool too. I came here to what I thought was learning poses and found something that I've been looking for, and didn't know that this was what it was going to be. This is something that like I had believed in, but no one around me in my hometown or my family or anything would ever be open to this, so it's not really like I'm exposed, and it allows me to be able to dive deep into it without a hesitation, that it's not, you know, BS or woo-woo or whatever you want to call it, that this is something that's very real, and that if I want to practice it, I can get it.
Whoa. How many people feel like Ash is coming out of the spiritual closet?
Yeah.
Alright, man in the back.
My name is Shakri. I am from the Austerity in Nuevo Mexico, USA. And I followed my sister here because she started looking younger and wiser and doing a lot more cool stuff than me. So I was like, I need to get on that train. So that's why I got here.
Nice. Good to see.
My name is Mimi, and I'm leading a yoga teacher training course. I have 5 students that joined me here after I learned about the phenom, Satyatma. And I'm very grateful to be able to join you in your class about I'm 6 years in my deep, intimate journey with what yoga really is. And for over 20 years, I thought it was just asana. So I'm a little bit further along on the path, but I'm still learning. So I seek counsel for those who know more than me.
Thank you.
I'm from California, and I always love a fresh perspective on the Yamas and Niyamas, or whatever is going on. I happen to be this, so I love it.
Okay, I'm Kevin, and I am an omaholic. Is that cheesy?
Omaholic?
Yeah, omaholic.
Homaholic?
Yeah.
Omaholic.
Sorry, I was like an AA type
omaholic,
of thing.
okay.
Yeah. You know, like when you're in AA, like, hi, I'm Kevin. I'll get on with it. So I'm from the States, yeah. Now he's laughing. He's laughing at me. It's okay, let it out, let it out. I'm from the States. I've been living in Hong Kong for 14 years, and I'm here with Mimi's Svadhyaya yoga school, teacher training, finding myself. Not necessarily to teach, but maybe I'm starting to second guess that, so maybe I'm interested to teach. But yeah, no, it's been an interesting journey, and I thank you for your classes. I thank you, Mimi, and yeah, value everything. Thank you. Cheers, man.
I'm Chris from Hong Kong. Also here with Mimi, teacher training. Also saying, I was thinking that yoga was just about the asanas part, and like really opened my mind that it's only just a small part of it. And I'm here because I want to take one step closer to finding my true self.
Ooh.
I may never be there, but
Hey.
I think throughout, but the practice, it's the journey that counts, not the destination.
I'm going to X that one out.
Never say
Can't
never.
accept that here. Watch your language. Like, yoga means to get there. So if you say, you know what I mean, I may never be there, you're like setting that up. Whereas the actual fact, Patanjali says you can get there, and that liberation comes quickly when the desire for it is intense. So not only can you have it relatively quickly if your desire is intense. Thank you. All right.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm Keon's assistant. I'm filming, but I'm always here to like deepen my knowledge about yoga to help control my mind and connect with the divinity within.
Nice. Practical. How's it been helping you practically?
I'm able to make clear decisions. I'm able to distinguish between my mind and my emotions, my ego, and like genuine higher guidance way more easier, whereas before I was just always lost in my mind, like always lost in my mind, whereas now I can sort of, like I never had this before, like a thought will come and I'll be like, oh, that's not useful, next. Whereas before, literally, I would just go down that thought, and wherever it took me, I would just keep going down it, and I had like no control, and I'd always find myself in these like spirals of just like too much going on. Whereas now, I definitely like don't have control over my mind, but I'm so much like more stable. And yeah, what I said before, like I was never able to like pick and choose what thoughts I should listen to, or like what is my mind or what is my emotions. I was just kind of like stumbling through it all, whereas now I feel like I have like more of a stand.
Wow. All right, this is worthy of some time. First of all, how many people can relate to what she was talking about pre-yoga? How many people feel like yoga has helped them the way it's helped Sada? Oh, all right, and everyone's still kind of working, huh? So Sada, how has yoga helped you distinguish between your mind and your ego and genuine higher guidance? There's three different things. Maybe we should, how about between your mind and ego / versus genuine higher guidance?
I think because I'm like stiller, it feels like there's more space. Whereas before, it was like the space was so narrow that all that would come through was just like thoughts and emotions, thoughts and emotions. Whereas the space is like way wider. So there's still thoughts and emotions, but it's like there's this like channel in the middle where like sometimes something more can come through. And I can feel it when it's something more. I'm like, oh, that didn't like necessarily come from me. And it just feels like solid. Whereas my thoughts and emotions feel like a million things happening at once. Yeah, I don't know, did that answer?
Yes. Can you give us an example of a thought that, for example, you said would come and now you have the ability to be like, next?
Maybe like a self-limiting thought, like something would come up thinking like, oh, you can't do this thing because of that, or...
You mean like, for example, you may never be there with your true self?
Yeah, something like that, like this is too hard, or
So you
I
can
don't know,
just take that
anything.
thought and just throw it aside?
I mean, yeah, I guess like when I'm feeling more balanced and stable, like it's not always that easy, but for sure, before I would have just like fed into it, whereas now I'm like, oh, like, no.
So what was the difference between the higher guidance and the mind and ego?
Higher guidance feels like certain and stable and solid, whereas like my mind and ego is like always changing and it's just like really unstable, and I like can't trust it most of the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, all right, well, thank you. Thanks for enduring the hot seat. All right. So, just to remember what we covered. Man, you know what? I might actually just throw in 3. We might actually talk about Ishvara Pranidhana because the yoga school's last class. And if we do that, we'll copy them. We'll get them all. Might just, you're like, yeah? I think that's the best thing. All right, let's see if we can remember. Who remembers the Yamas? Who wants to blurt out some things about them? Let's start at the beginning. First,
Non-violence.
non-violence.
Truth.
Truth.
Non-coveting.
Non-stealing. Chris, nice.
Sexual.
Next, number 4.
Sexual discipline.
Number 5.
Non-grasping.
Non-grasping. Cool. And then number 7 over here.
Contentment.
Contentment. So how are these 3 related? Huh? Desire. Exactly. So you overcome desire, you don't steal, you don't grasp, and you have peace. What are the basis of all spirituality and morality?
Love.
Huh?
Truth is the basis of love.
Oneness.
Right. So what 2 qualities up here are the basis of all the rest of them?
Satya. Satya.
Yes. The teacher's giving all the answers. Yes, ahimsa and satya, nonviolence and truth, are the basis. So what we're going to cover today is saucha, tapas. Well, we've talked about swadhyaya a lot, right? And what is swadhyaya? Self-study, self-awareness. So these are the yamas and niyamas from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, foundational qualities that all yogis have to have. So we were going over, for people who weren't here first, non-violence, truth, non-stealing, sexual discipline, non-grasping, meaning non-greed. Saucha means cleanliness. Santosha means contentment, being at peace with what you have. Who remembers what tapas means?
Austerity.
Austerity. So we're going to cover cleanliness, also purity, austerity. Swadhyaya, we already know, self-study, self-observation. Who can tell me why swadhyaya is essential for not even a yogi, I would say a developed human being or a happy one?
To know yourself is to know everything. pretty much. So it's your own self making yourself be the discipline, as opposed to an outside force.
Self-control, self-power, being within yourself. Also, what he said is it's true. Once you really know yourself, you actually know everything else, because everything is one. That's true too. Now, on a less, for lack of a better word, deep level, what's a very surface, not surface, but very practical reasons Swadhyaya is essential.
Know how your mind works, know how your ego works, know how your emotions work.
Right, why would it be helpful to know how your own mind, ego, and emotions work?
So you can go beyond them?
Yes, and you can control them.
Yes.
And you can put them down when they're not needed, which is actually most of the time. Right? We stay wrapped up in these things. There's something beyond that. That space that we touch in meditation, right? Which is sublime, pure, and easy. The mind, emotions, ego, not sublime, not pure, not easy. Right? And so if you know how they're working, you can put them down. That's the benefit of Swadhyaya. And then another benefit is what Shukri said. You had gained self-control, and then by knowing the self, you know all things.
Somebody said last class it was easy coverings to uncover because they're your own. They're the closest to you, the closest coverings or the closest sheath is your own.
Yeah, but you know what? That makes it sometimes harder to see because the ego's job is to keep you in illusion. So the ego is not about self-discovery, right? But it's about discovering everybody else's shit. Right? Ego's all about that. Anyway, so that's Swadhyaya. Ishwari Pranadhana, we will cover this. All of these obviously could use way bigger treatments than we're able to give them in the time we have here. Ishwari Pranadhana, letting you out of the bag. I could have saved that for later, but I'm saying it now. Means surrender to God. It is a central quality and practice of a yogi. In other words, remember I said this? They're not optional. Remember I said I had one person in class say, "Oh, they're kind of like guidelines. They're not, rules of that a good yogi rules by." Yeah, yogis, we don't really do rules. We do truth. But the truth is, you got to be doing these things, or you can't be a yogi. It doesn't work. Why would surrender to God be an essential quality and practice of a yogi? You got to know what the definition of yoga means for that. Softball.
Oneness.
Right, but what is so? Huh?
I don't know. The nature or something.
What is the definition of yoga? I've said this one a lot.
Union with God.
Union.
How? Add to it. Give me the full
Neutralizing
definition.
the body and the mind.
Huh?
You're neutralizing the body and the mind.
Neutralizing the mind. The activities of the mind. Exactly. So it's union of God. Actually, I think I'm going to just clarify that neutralize. It's by bringing to cessation the activities of the mind. Or bringing the mind to total stillness. I don't know. We can debate how we got to come up with some standard, huh? What do you guys vote? Yoga is union with God through bringing to cessation the activities of the mind, neutralizing the mind, or bringing the mind to absolute stillness. Absolute stillness might work best, huh? Yeah, absolute. Okay, absolute stillness. We got it.
Union.
Yoga is union with God through bringing the mind to absolute stillness. That flows. Thanks, team. Okay, since that's yoga, why would surrender to God be essential?
Only if you surrender and give up your ego, you can become one with God.
Why would the ego prevent you from being one? Well, I'm going to go even deeper. Aren't you already one? Isn't the ego part of God already too?
No, it's individualized.
Ooh. Okay. That's good. So this is going to get technical. See, he's right. Everything is still God, but these individual parts of and it's just technical terms, are not what we're calling the pure Godhead. So you're saying ego is part of God, but it's not the pure God. And if we wanted to return to the pure Godhead, but why would the ego prevent us from returning to the pure Godhead?
Because the ego thinks an I. The ego is I am. And that prevents you from union. It creates duality. But God isn't duality, God is union.
Couldn't say it better myself. Like everyone's stunned. Everyone's like, okay. Thank you. Did everyone hear that? So right, the ego thinks it's an individual, and the truth is we're not individuals, we're all one. And by surrendering everything to God, God herself does away with your ego. And it says this a lot in scriptures. It basically says, and actually even the Christians have this. There's a Christian verse, forgot where exactly, but it says, maybe it's in Ephesians. It says, "For by grace have ye been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is a gift of God." So it says, you've been saved by grace. You access that grace through your faith. But even that faith didn't come from you. Even that faith is a gift from God. So the most that we can do is actually participate. The most that we can do is do all these things. But the actual crossover, actually it says in the Upanishad, the self chooses whom the self pleases. Meaning God decides. But He tells you how to get chosen. And actually read more scripture. It says, do all of these and you'll realize that you're God, but also through devotion. Right? Love. Love causes God to act. In fact, in some of the Bhakti scriptures, it says that was the only way to get God to do what you wanted. The story of Mother Yashoda, who was the mother of Krishna. When Krishna was a baby, he acted naughty. So Mother Yashoda tried to tie him to a wooden mortar to punish him so he couldn't run away. But she found no matter how much rope she used, it wasn't enough to tie Krishna up. Why? Because Krishna was God. But then, Krishna, seeing her motherly devotion and her love for him, allowed himself to be tied and limited, apparently, because his mother loved him so much. So that's how it is. Actually, there's a secret. Has anyone ever seen movies where or read something where it's like, oh, you chant the secret mantra, God has to come and obey your will? Everyone seen that? It's probably a big story. You know what? I don't know about secret mantras, but I do know about pure love and exclusive devotion. It forces divinity to respond. I know this for a fact because I interact with divine beings. And I see how it works, and I've seen it, and they've confessed it. You can't get Ganesh to do what you want except by pure love and devotion. And if you have pure love and devotion for a being like Ganesh, you'll actually bind him to your service. So we reach God through loving God, and we show our love for God through surrender to God. Let's say that again. We reach God through loving God, and we show our love for God by surrendering to God. Jesus said, "Who loves me? Those who follow my commandments." Sir?
Which part plays the soul between the ego and God? Is it the same as God?
That's a big question. We've answered in these other classes, but let's give you a summary. So, actually, who can answer that? We had a whole class on the soul, the self, and God.
What was the question one more time?
Want to ask the question one more time?
Which part plays the role between the ego and God?
Meaning, what is the soul's relation to the ego and God? Where's the soul in all that? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Satya, Atma, self-God. Right? Atma.
Atma means the self. But his question is, what's the relationship between God, the soul, and the ego? I know this is tough. This is review notes. You know what? Watch the videos again. Actually, that's what people were saying that. Actually,
The
we were
soul
talking
is
about
in
that.
this sheet, right?
It's in the sheet. Oh, she's getting it. This is good. No, go with it. The soul is in the
Soul's
sheets.
in the sheet, and
What are the
this is
sheets?
Our bodies, our skin, and really oneness would be surrendering yourself. So God is, I don't know where I'm going with this, but God, we
God
should
is
try to be God because we're all oneness, right? So there isn't really, ego is this sheet that's holding us as an individual. So we all are one. However, our egos have created self-preservation to think that we're an individual. So I don't know.
That's epic.
Is that something, I don't know how to put God though to us because we're supposed to.
No, but that was epic. Did everyone follow what she said? She was saying the first thing is the soul is encased in sheaths. Sheaths are coverings. These coverings are called bodies. So it's the physical body, the emotional body, and the mental body. So the soul is encased in that, but God is the one. So the soul is an individualized part of God that has apparent coverings on it so that it appears to be an individual separate from other individuals. But the truth is everything is God. And all of those souls are one. They're the same thing, but their coverings are different. Because their coverings are different, they think that they're different beings. But the truth is they're not. And so the soul is the part of God having that apparently limited experience and understanding. Whereas God is the oneness that never falls under its own illusions. Did you get that?
And the ego
I thought
arose
that.
for self-preservation of that.
Ego is the actual body that creates the idea of individuality. So the ego is that body. So the mind and emotions are bodies, they have other functions. The ego is the body that creates that very idea.
But the ego is separated from the soul.
No, the ego is a covering on the soul.
We're trapped in these.
It believes itself to be separate, creating the individualization.
No, yeah, it believes itself to be separate from other parts of God.
For self-preservation.
Right, and it seeks to preserve itself because it believes in its individuality.
Or the ego is created to separate, but us, including the soul, including the ego, were created for experience, movement, and expression. So to get rid of the ego gets you back to oneness, which is what he wants, that movement, experience, and expression for. So you have to clear it out to get back to the oneness. But he wanted the experience, he wanted the expression so that all those little parts could come back together, but through every avenue, through every channel. So it's about the movement. So the ego is there for a reason.
I got goosebumps. You know why I appreciate you guys? They've been listening. Sometimes I wonder, right? Sometimes like, did anybody get anything? No, thank you. That was epic philosophy, though, actually. You know what I mean? What he was saying was, the truth is, since God is one, he wanted to experience the illusion. He wanted to act as if he was bound by an ego and a mind. It's all this great game called Leela. And the game is God falling asleep and waking up and realizing, oh my, I'm not my mind, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my ego. Boom. Did we get it? In summary.
But is the soul the purity as God?
Yes.
So it's the same on the same level?
It's the same. The soul is the same as God, but the soul is an individualized version of it. So Rumi explained it, right? The common thing is the soul is like a drop of water in the ocean. So if you take the drop out, right, it's got the same qualities as the ocean, but it's like this small, right? And then you can do things to that drop that you can't do to the ocean. Put the drop back in the ocean, it disappears into the oneness. But Shakri's wants to take us deeper with that.
I think he wants you to write on the board the
the three divisions: Praram, Atma, Supreme Soul, Brahman, Personal, and Bhakti.
Oh, that would go, that would take us off course though, because we got to talk about cleanliness and because he's talking about how God is described. That's another. Let's do that another time. But thank you. I like the review. But no, that was a good question. No, the soul is the same as God. It just appears to be an individual being covered by illusions that it's not. And illusions, the things that create the illusions are the bodies. And the ego is the first body that covers the soul, creating the illusion of individual existence. In the game, and then more are added to you that reinforce that illusion: mind, ego, intelligence. And then what happens is the game is to transcend those, purify and transcend those to return to the oneness. Done. All right. So we covered surrender to God. We'll read some things in relation to those. But let's get into cleanliness, austerity, and surrender to God. What those means. All right, how about this? Who can give me a reason why cleanliness is an essential quality for a yogi? And take it deeper if you can. What does cleanliness actually mean? And not just cleanliness, actually purity. Let me give you a definition of purity though. Purity means to be only one thing. Meaning, pure evil is somebody who doesn't want any good at all. Pure goodness, somebody who doesn't want any evil at all. What is pure milk? It's milk, nothing else in it. Right? So that's simply what purity means. It means to be one thing. So why is purity and why is cleanliness? Why are they essential qualities for a yogi? And what's a yogi? A yogi, the definition of a yogi is a person who's dedicated him or herself to the path of yoga. So the answer is in what is yoga?
Yoga is neutralizing your mind. So a yogi is someone who can stabilize the mind and control every emotion and live every yama and niyama.
A yogi is someone who's practicing that. A yogi doesn't have to be someone who's mastered that. So you can be a yogi without controlling every thought and emotion. If not, if you couldn't, there'd be no yogis almost ever.
But there is nobody who is 100% pure, right?
No, that's another thing. Exactly. Nothing's 100% pure.
Because I was thinking about that, but I'm not 100% pure good.
No, everything is in degrees for sure. However, we're going to get into this. This is going to flow nicely. We're going to talk about why, for a yogi, you're seeking 100% purity, although it's not attainable. This gets a little deep in the material world. Because this is a world of duality. There's always yin and the yang. There's always darkness and a light. There's also always light and darkness. There's always male and a female. There's always female and a male.
But your point is you want to be 100% pure.
If you want to return to the oneness, which is beyond duality. So that's where the purity is. It's in the oneness. Right? Once you enter into duality, everything becomes mixed. So for a yogi who wants to unite with the oneness, which is God, through neutralizing her mind, she has reached something called purity. And actually, you know what I want to do? Can I erase this? I want to give you a better example of that. But hold on, I want to see if you can get this. I want to see if you leave. While I'm erasing this, Annalena, tell me again, what is a yogi?
A yogi is someone who tries to live every yama and yama, and tries to neutralize the mind and tries to control the mind every emotion who comes in to select if it is good at that moment or just an emotion.
Agreed. Why does a yogi want to do those things?
Oneness?
So that she can unite with God, or the oneness. So in summary, I'm going to summarize. A yogi is a person who through daily practice, through committed daily practice, is striving to unite her soul with God purely by bringing the mind to total stillness. So in practice, you know what that means if you're a yogi, in your daily life, you're always trying to bring your mind back to a neutral point. Because you know what? It's not going to stay there for anybody. No matter how far you go in yoga, if you leave your mind to its own devices, most of the time it's going to head some direction that is not positive. Just that a yogi is going to have much less the more it practices. So yogi in real life is always trying to bring the mind back to this neutral point and always trying to find God. Krishna has all these practices. We'll write this down. He summarizes, right? And he says, the best spiritual practice is on the test. This is why I'm making it dramatic. I want you to remember. The best spiritual practice is to always think of me. That's what Krishna said. Why? Because Krishna's God. He said, so out of all these practices, the goal is to always think of God. So that's what a yogi's trying to do. Alright, bam. So I wanted to introduce something called the gunas. A guna means a rope. Some refer to them. These are the three basic energies of our material universe. So yogis say that there's three energies in the universe and they're always interacting. And actually I'm going to put something above these three energies. One I'm going to put transcendence. Then the first one is Satya, Rajas, and Tamas. Anybody ever heard of these? Besides Mimi? Oh, that's right. And Julia has a master. Can I? Okay. Julia has a master's in yoga philosophy from
Yoga studies from Royal Marymount.
Wow. All right.
I love this stuff.
Me too. Dive in.
So, Sattva is the neutral state of transcendence, meditation, everything's peaceful.
Let's call it balance. You're right. Balance, equilibrium. But you could call it peaceful. Here's another thing. I'm going to add to this. Motivations for actions in Sattvic. So Sattvic people, Julia, this is not obvious, so don't be afraid not to get it. But you can actually say what you think. What is the duty of someone who is living in Sattvic energy?
What is the duty?
Never mind. I failed. I do this all the time.
Well, I think of like monks and people who are like dedicated to like being, like dedicated their lives to being in that state.
Yeah, I messed up. What I was going to say was, what's the motivation to action for people who are Sattvic? So people who are living in balance and peace, right? That means they've got their minds almost neutralized. What motivates them to action?
To be able to return there again.
To what?
So like push it and then learn what's going on there and then bring themselves out.
Yeah, I mean, that's a practice. But what I mean is, in general, what motivates them to action? Why do they do whatever they do?
Why would they leave that state?
Are you ready?
Duty to bring somebody else along?
Not necessarily, but I was going to say duty. But there could be a lot of duties. I kind of messed that one up because I said, what is their duty? I was like, duh. So, actually, so Sattvic, you could call this balance, peaceful goodness. The energy of goodness. So what happens is they get motivated simply by duty. This ought to be done. Who remembers this word?
Dharma.
Dharma. Right? Dharma is also defined as duty. Dharma means that which upholds. Right? It means that which upholds the moral nature of the universe. That which allows for the harmonious evolution of all things toward light. So that which ought to be done, that which is your duty. So because they are seeking transcendence, which is beyond these modes, they're practicing Dharma. And those who are living just for Dharma are motivated by duty. Note, the reason I'm juxtaposing this is because they're not motivated by their own desires. Remember I said that? Remember we went over the subtle bodies and the bodies? We said all the bodies have their own desires. Your physical body has its own desires. Your mental body, your emotional body. So a person who's motivated just by their desires, actually, you know what it says in a lot of scriptures? It's just an animal. Right? Because that's what animals are motivated by. A person who goes beyond the animal stage and beyond the ego. If you're motivated by your individual desires, you're motivated by ego. A person who transcends that acts for Dharma, so they're motivated by duty. All right, what is Rajas? Well said.
Rajas is like high intensity, lots of energy, lots of heat, going.
Passion.
Passion.
Energy. So what are passionate, energetic people motivated by? Like you're right, Rajas is very fiery. So fiery, passionate people, what motivates them? I'm going to give it to you. Desire. Their personal desires motivate them. They always want something, so they're always in movement trying to get it. Right? Where someone in sattva is still and lets things come to him or her. Does that make sense? So tamas is the energy of
Slow.
lethargy.
Yeah, lethargic.
Or, say again?
Heavy. Block.
Right. Heaviness, lethargy, heaviness, ignorance, indolence. For people who don't speak English as a first language, indolence means someone who's just, it means lazy, but also just like uncaring, right? So that's that energy. So can you actually see how the world is composed of these three energies and they're always interacting? All of us have these at certain times. These energies predominate in different days. These energies are what are incorporated into foods, like music, television. Everything can be broken down into these three energies, right? Tamasic people are motivated by fear. Everyone grab that? So back to speaking about cleanliness and purity. And the question was, why would a yogi need purity? Actually, let me just say, sattva is the platform also of material purity. So I'm throwing you a big hint. Why would yogis need to be sattvic?
To not get sucked into the illusions of desire or fear as motivational factors.
Right, she said to not get sucked into the motivations of desire and fear as a practice. Why would that lead you away from the path of yoga?
Attachment.
Okay, yes. How about this? Yes, it leads to attachment. Desire leads to attachment. Why is attachment not a good thing for a yogi?
Because, well, if you're attached to something, then you have greed, all those things that go against the Yamas, Niyamas, the 8 things, right?
Right. She's like connecting the dots. Exactly. Attachment comes from desire. Desire takes away your peace. Right? Causes you to take things that don't belong to you. Tells you to desire things you don't need. It takes you away from yoga. It takes you straight into the mind. It's actually ego-based. Right? Exactly. So also, sattva, and this is important to remember, is the springboard to transcendence. So here's the thing. You cannot jump over one of the modes. This is super important. This is actually some very practical things of how you use this science. If you are tamasic, which means you're experiencing lethargy, heaviness, ignorance, fear. Depression is also tamasic. Extended grief. Not short-term grief. Short-term grief could be just you expressing your emotional body. Extended grief means that your emotional body's stuck. Right? Tamas means you're stuck. Yes.
And anxiety is also a property or a mental quality of rajas.
Yes. Well done. Well said. Good addition. People who are full of desires are anxious. Right?
I just wanted to add, it just helps me when I think of bipolar disorder, for example. I think of someone who's being pulled between the two spaces of mania and depression. So getting sucked into rajas and being sucked into tamasic states.
Exactly. What's nice about you understanding that is now you see how yoga philosophy is practical. Man, the yogis got this by analyzing the world. I mean, the science is here. Exactly. So if you're in this state, can you realistically go to a state of balance, peace, goodness, purity? I mean, I'm talking about the dude sitting at home with Cheetos, playing video games for 18 hours. I know somebody like that. That's how they came up. Actually, he doesn't eat Cheetos, but there could be other people eating Cheetos. You know what I'm saying? Can you go from there to being a yogi? What does that person need?
A teacher.
True, but... True, that you were getting closer. He needs to get off the couch.
To feel really what he's covering up by those modalities.
The positive thing about rajas is it's movement. So when a person is in tamagun, this is like the mega class because it's the last one. I'm throwing everything in there. But actually, gunas are a central part of yoga philosophy. So if a person is in tamagun, this is called tamagun, right? Then that person needs to motivate. They need rajas to overcome tamas. Does everyone get that? So they need passion, they need fire, they need movement, they need energy. You don't want anxiety, but you know what it is? These people need that want something enough that they have to move to get it. Right? And that could be yourself. When you sink into depression, you might need something to motivate you, be it internal or internal. Right? It could be just, I'm tired of being here. And right, you get up. Right? Because that's your motivation. So none of these are intrinsically necessarily evil. However, evil is going to predominate the lower down the energies go, right? So you use rajas to overcome tamas. But then what's the danger of rajas? And there's a lot of dangers. Of passion.
Like too much desire and like an addiction.
Addiction. And what happens when people are addicted to something? How do they treat other people? Typically.
More like evil, like using, lying, stealing.
Right, people become things because this addiction takes over, right? So too much desire. Also, your desires are going to get frustrated. You're going to be angry. Anger is typically predominant in Rajagun, right? Sadness in Tamagun. Peace in Sattvagun, right? Also, you know what? Anger. It says this in the scriptures. Which one is it? It says, I forgot what scripture it says. It says, one moment of anger, actually it says this in Buddhist scriptures, can destroy a lifetime of good works. And it's true. It also talks about passion. It says it can never be fully satisfied. Desire can never be fully satisfied. So how do you get out of this state? And also, quite frankly, we talked about the other day. Desire eventually leads to just suffering. Right? Desire, the Buddha said, desire is the source of suffering. So how do you get out of this precarious state? But you need this to overcome that lower state. So you use sattva to overcome rajas. You use your energy and your desire for movement, and you direct it toward things that bring balance and peace and goodness and purity. And you know how you do that? Is you start doing things you should do rather than things you want to do. How about that? Does that make sense? So this is the beginning of the path of yoga. It's not just that, it's the beginning of the path of success. When you talk to motivational teachers, they might not say it in those words, but that's when you really can turn things around in your life. I've said this a lot. Maybe Sada has said this. When I'm practicing yoga, you know what I say? And I'm going to be raw with it. Fuck my emotions. Right? That might be insensitive if I said that about your emotions. But, you know what? Sometimes I ain't got time for it. How many people have heard the same thought over and over again, same feeling? When you realize that the emotions in mind are something separate from you, that's when you be like, fuck off, bro, I'm busy. I don't have time for this anymore. Right? But of course you have to practice. But imagine that with your depression. You just get up one day and go, I'm done, I'm tired, I'm out. Right? You just roll out on depression. Right? That's what the yogi has. That's the power that controlling yourself has. But you also do that because it ought to be done. And have you noticed really good people? That's what they're doing. Have you noticed that actually the best people we know are living for others? Anyone ever notice that? They're doing things that ought to be done. This person needs this. Like your grandmother, right? The person who you felt the most love from, they were always like, well, I gotta go, Sally needs this. Right? Most people don't give a shit. Right? But people in Sattva Gun do. You act out of duty. And your duty is, according as a yogi, to serve the oneness. Okay. So why, again, and I want you guys to summarize. We pretty much said it. Does a yogi need saucha as an essential quality? Saucha means cleanliness. I gave it in the context of the gunas. You can speak in terms of the gunas. Julia already once said it. She said, without purity, let's call it what it is, purity of mind, purity of intent, you'll get captured by the lower modes. And you'll be far from transcendence. Can everyone see how Sattva Gun would be the springboard to transcendence? How about this? You know what the transcendent state is like? You're neutral to all of this, even Sattva. They says that the true yogis go beyond good and bad. Because actually, that's the oneness. People don't like to think about this, but if everything is one and evil exists, evil's part of God. But God is beyond those qualities. And so to go to that neutral state beyond these qualities, however, you have to raise your vibration. Because this transcendent state of neutrality, the vibration is pure and high. The next vibration closest to it is Sattva Gun. Everyone get that?
How would you function though in this world if you were on that transcendence level?
You just do what you're supposed to do. Without
But you'd be past that. As
yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking if you meant it. Yeah, and so if you're in transcendent, so that state, if you actually reach that, how about this? That state comes in stages. Then you get pushed back and you have to advance. So, but what happens is that's when you get the high spiritual teachers, and usually they are going in their last lifetime, and they're going to be acting in what's called Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha means pure. Because you know what? Here's the problem with this Sattva, even Sattva Guna. It's still under the illusion of individuality, right? You're still almost thinking that you're an individual, right? You're going to do good. Shuddha sattva means pure goodness, is you're not even thinking of yourself as an individual. You're simply acting as the divine causes you to act until the divine takes you out of here to a higher plane. So that's how they would act, just as God directs them.
So you'll be pretty much cared for by one of, like, or carried by one of them. You're not.
What do you mean, how they're going to earn money?
Like, how would you even function?
Yeah, no, what I mean is then God will work through you.
Yeah.
But God will leave a particular percentage of maybe your personality, etc. When you think of great teachers, Ramana Maharishi, Swami Shivananda, Swami Prabhupada, they still acted, but they were acting purely for the divine for the most part. Do you know what I mean? For the most part. Nobody might have been 100% pure, but for the most part. In fact, Ramana Maharishi said this. He said about his enlightenment. He said, the fact is, I did nothing. Some higher power took over me, and I was completely in its hands. So that's what how a master's at. A master becomes a puppet of the divine. Cool. All right, so let's read a little bit about Saucha. We'll move on to austerity, and then we'll end with some stuff. Because we're probably not. This is some stuff from Wikipedia, which is great. I support Wikipedia. I highly recommend it. Okay, Saucha literally means purity, cleanliness, and clearness. It refers to purity of mind, speech, and body. That's the first thing. So let's remember that. That's on the text. It refers to external purity and cleanliness, mean keeping your home clean, keeping your room clean, keeping your body clean. But then internal purity, keeping your thoughts clean, keeping your intentions clean, keeping your feelings clean. Saucha, or holistic purity, is considered essential for health. So why practice Saucha? The first thing is you get sick if you don't. Right? Happiness. We're going to talk about that in well-being. Get this, your emotional bodies. Remember we were talking about the bodies? Like I like to double back. So the next body over is actually called your etheric body. It's your energy body where your chakras are, and your etheric body emanates your aura. Right? Has everyone noticed that your aura picks up things all the time? Dirty energies all the time, clean energies, high vibrations all the time. Right? So, one second. Because the etheric body is a link to your emotional body and your mental body. Because everyone kind of vaguely remember this who was in that class. We were talking about the bodies and its levels. There was a physical body, etheric body, emotional body, mental body, intellectual body. And that relates to the various planes of existence. So we're talking about the coverings on the soul, which we've been talking about. It's very body. So your emotions are actual body. It's a body of energy. That's why it's very intrinsic to you as an individual. It sticks to you. It changes slowly because it's a covering, just like your body. Your physical body, you can change it, but it's not going to change automatically in the day. Your emotions stay relatively the same because it's a form, it's a function. When the etheric body is the intermediary between the physical world and the emotional and mental and intellectual bodies. So if something dirty comes into your aura, it can enter your mind, right? And then if it enters your mind, you're back in the soup. So that's why you have to actually practice even purity of your external environment for you to be happy. You have to have cleanliness to be happy. And think about this. Think about people whose houses are a wreck. Now, granted, you could be like a neat freak and still be miserable. I'm conceding that. But on average, I would think people who are less clean are less happy. Would everyone agree? And this is because of the energetic dynamics of it as well. Let's see what else they have to say. Saucha goes... Oh, how about this? Also, lack of saucha, such as letting toxins build up in the body, are a source of impurity. Right? Meaning, if you're eating a dirty diet, toxins build up, it becomes impure, you can't channel higher divine light. Now, once you channel it, you can eat like me. But, kidding, don't eat like me. But the point is, emotional toxins can build up. Intellectual toxins can build up as well. That's why we need internal and external cleanliness. And also, so how about this? You can use these as a tool. Foods also have these different energies. Vegan foods, vegetarian foods, and actually saying milk is sattvic. It purifies the body. In fact, was it you, Liv, who was telling me that there was a quote about the food you eat, either, can you say that one?
It either contributes to disease or it heals you. Like the food that you eat either heals you or it harms you. There's no in between.
I love it. No middle ground. So that's right. Sattvic foods are going to be doing this. And I would say though, I think even though there's no in between, I think it's mixed. I think a food can help and hurt. Do you know what I mean? At the same time. But you want to be clean, choosing foods that are cleaner, higher up. Meat is either rajasic or tamasic. Heavier meats, beef and pork, are tamasic. A benefit of tamagun, though, is when you need to be grounded. Right? Actually, so say you have an overabundance. I mean, you ideally want to be sattvic, but say you're sattvic and you're floating away. Eating heavier things, dealing with lower energies can actually ground you. So yogis have to be what's called skillful or even expert. You have to know how these energies work and then how to wield them like a magician for your own benefit. Does that make sense? So yogis don't live by hard and fast rules. In fact, I read this wonderful quote. It says, spirituality, unlike religion, is not about do's and don'ts. It's about growth. In the beginning, and especially even in the middle, and even in the end, to some degree, we're practicing according to principles because we want to purify. We want to purify. But Krishna says, actually, one who is exclusively devoted to me, even though he may appear to be the worst of sinners, is actually the greatest of saints. Because transcendent people will do things that common people don't understand for a higher good. Right? Because they've gone beyond the raw duality of things and they understand a bigger purpose. We, however, we're practicing. But what I'm really trying to say is once your practice gets more advanced, then you can break the rules, so to speak, for your own benefit. Meaning, I'll give myself an example. I'll do things that when I'm in deep yoga practice, I won't do. Like drink wine. Right? Actually, I drink wine maybe 10 times a year. Wine or beer. Right? I know when to do it, and you know what it does? It allows me to just not have to control my mind for a moment and have a good release. And that reset, boom, aids me in my further yoga practice. Does that make sense? But however, I'm not going to drink every day because it would disturb my consciousness. I can't be a yogi drinking every day. I can't be a yogi even drinking frequently. It's too disturbing. But that release once in a while, so you monitor and you use these energies. Right? When you're drunk, you're tamasic or rajasic, for sure. But if I've been striving for sattva all the time, which we're going to, this is a nice transition to austerity. If you engage in excessive austerity, or austerities at inopportune times, meaning you don't need to fast right now. Your body needs food and you fast. Right? Because you feel like performing austerities. You do damage to yourself. I was in a Hare Krishna temple once and this woman was giving a class and she said something about austerities. Because listen, austerity is great and Hare Krishnas are big on it and yogis are big on it. In fact, I was just reading in the Mahabharata, the great epic of India today. It says, the wise live something like only for God, or something like that. And in order to do that, you have to practice austerities. I mean, you have to do difficult things. You have to do purifying things. But if you overdo them, because austerity's fire, you burn yourself. Right? So all of these things were given, their principles, etc. But Jesus said, be wise in their application, because they should be applied according to time, place, and circumstance. And this is why you need swadhyaya. You need to know what you need. And also about balance. Most of us are out of balance in that we're too tamasic and too rajasic, right? So we need to most of the time be practicing sattvic, right? It's not going to be all the time that people are going to be like, I need tamas and rajas as a yogi. But sometimes, so be wise and also be adaptable, be able to flow. The Tao Te Ching says, born human beings are soft and supple. Dead, they are dry and brittle. And he says, the hard will be broken, and the soft will prevail. And so you have to know when to be hard, but you need to flow. So you learn all these things. It's like a martial artist, right? And Shukri's a martial artist, and he's probably a high level one, right? You've been doing it all your life. So would you say in the beginning you're learning all these principles, you're learning these, I forgot, like what do they call it, like when it's like yeah, what do they call it?
Kata.
Katas. Right, to explain what that is?
It's just a series of movements.
Right, you're learning a series of movements that are standard, right? But would you say in the beginning it's good to get those down so that your body knows how to move, your body gets conditioned to be able to perform it, you know what it is. But as you advance, would you say that high level martial artists are sticking to those, are they called katas?
Kata, K-A-T-A.
Katas, say in a real fight, or are they flowing?
They're flowing. Bruce Lee said be like water.
They're flowing, but learning the principles enabled them to be able to flow. Would you say that makes sense?
Yes, sir.
So I would say we call this emotional martial arts, right? You get these things down, and you do it by practicing, especially in the beginning. You act sattvic even when you don't want to, because you need to condition yourself to be sattvic. And then later, you know, okay, now it's time for a little passion. Right? Now it's time for me to chill out. Right? And I think the higher levels know that. In the beginning, you practice. Cool. Alright, so everyone get that for cleanliness and purity? So let's advance to austerity, tapas. And I love this. And then we'll try to go beyond. Actually, I'm going to read something. So let me tell you. So tapas means burning. It means heat. And I'm just going to read something. So basically, tapas means austerity. It means doing something difficult now and suffering now for greater gain later. That is an essential quality and practice of a yogi. And let me just tell you something. A-yoga, who remembers what A-yoga means? Of the group? Non-yoga, false yoga, is the prevailing thing now in the Kali Yuga. So the Kali Yuga is the age of darkness. It says that we're living in it. It says false spirituality and fake everything, in fact, will predominate. Meaning there'll be more fake spiritualists than real ones. And the untrue thing will take precedence over the truth until the end. Of course, truth will turn it over. So a-yoga is predominant. You will hear that yoga is for pleasure. Your own pleasure. It's called kama, right? And have you noticed how they're linking yoga with sex so much? Even though the yogic principle is brahmacharya, sexual discipline, right? I've seen pictures. There's a picture, man, of somebody who's supposed to be a kirtan leader, and it's him like in the pool with a woman, like, you know what I mean? I'm not saying, hey, get in the pool with the woman, but don't promote that as like a yogic practice. Right? I mean, it can be a yogic practice, right? At a certain level when you're like, okay, I'm going to, you know what I mean? But what I mean is, don't promote sex as if it's yoga, right? But that's what's being practiced, this idea that you don't have to go through anything hard. You don't have to hold yourself responsible for anything. I was watching this video, I remember it's from Enlightenment. This guy, and he's talking about, he goes, nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. Is everyone seeing this now? Like, nobody's responsible for anything they do at all. Right? Yoga is saying differently. Yoga is literally saying, it's hard. I remember I've given these talks and people have been like, that's hard. I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. And of course it's going to be hard to get to the best thing. John Kimball said, yoga is a discipline that destroys all sorrow. Right? You can end sorrow, but you have to go through the fire to do it. So in the Mahabharata, which is again the great epic of India, Maharaj Yudhisthira, one of the main characters, is being, I'm going to practice Pratyahara, withdraw my consciousness from that, focusing. It got me. It so got me. Because I'm trying to formulate a thought and it just interrupted. Okay, Maharaj Yudhisthira. He's questioned by Dharma, Dharma incarnate, the Lord of Dharma, his father, actually named Yamaraj. He's the king of the dead. He's the Lord of death. And he's asking him questions, and it's part of a great game. Like, Dharmaraj has knocked his brothers out. It's like, if you want your brother's life, you got to answer these spiritual questions. Maharaj Yudhisthira is like, I'll do my best. So he asks him various things. One thing he asks him is, what is envy? And he says, envy is simply grief of the heart. And I was like, oh, that's good, huh? And I realized that's a very compassionate way to see jealousy, right? It means, why are you taking care of this person more than you're taking care of me, God? And so then he goes further. That was just a little side note. I thought it was really good. But back on the topic. He says, how can a person achieve anything? And he says, a person can achieve anything through the performance of austerities. It says in the yogic scriptures, it is through austerity that one develops Shakti, which is spiritual force. You develop power by doing hard things. And does that make sense? Even in the material world, you do that. If you get up every day, 6 o'clock, go to the gym. You know what I mean? That you're doing something hard that the average person won't do, you'll be rewarded with a better body. You get up even earlier, 5 a.m. and go to the temple. If you're sincere, you'll be rewarded with spiritual advancement. In fact, the scriptures are replete. When somebody wants a boon or somebody wants an advancement, they want a blessing from a deity. They perform austerities, they take a vow. And the heat generated by those austerities attracts that deity to bless them. They generate power in the subtle field by performing austerities. Actually, I'll give you even more. Everyone who knows who Ganesh is, the elephant-headed god. This is a story that I think it is from the Brahmacharya Purana, if I'm not mistaken. What happened was, and this is my favorite story about Lord Ganesh. There's various stories about how Lord Ganesh got his elephant head, but this is the one that's closest to the truth, actually. What happened was, Mother Parvati, who's the mother of the universe, is with her husband Shiva, and she sees Krishna. And Shiva is, all the three of these are gods, Shiva, Vishnu, and Krishna. But for the sake of Leela, they're playing this game, right? So Shiva is a male form of God, Vishnu is a form of God, and Parvati is a form of the female godhead. God is female. So Parvati and Shiva are husband and wife. Parvati sees Krishna, who is an incarnation of Vishnu. Krishna means black or dark skin, because Krishna was dark skinned. It also means all attractive. So Krishna is the form of God that manifests in a form that can attract everyone. So he's also called Purnavatar, which means the complete incarnation. So he's beautiful. He's the most beautiful. He's the wisest. He's the most powerful. He's the richest. He's the most famous. He's the most renounced. He's got all the qualities that attract people. So Parvati sees him, races back to her husband and says, I want Krishna to be born as my son. And I'm like, that's lofty, but you are the goddess. Shiva says, okay, we'll perform this rat, that means vow, to Lord Vishnu for 1 year. And Vishnu will come and be born. Krishna will come and be born as your son. So even the mother of the universe performed austerities for 1 year so that another form of God would bless her and be born as her son. And then, after that 1 year, she got pregnant and gave birth to Ganesh. And so Ganesh had the energies and qualities of Krishna and his father Shiva. And so that's why Ganesh, at a lower level, is actually the most attractive of all the deities and the most beloved. So the point I'm making is, even the mother of the universe performed austerities. In fact, Krishna goes further. Oh, this is going to be beautiful. I'm actually going to say it from memory. This is in the Mahabharata about austerity. He says, actually he talks about this. He says, I might mix two stanzas from the Mahabharata, but this is a story. And then we might mix two stories in one. He says, there's a debate amongst all the yogis about what path is better. Should a yogi renounce the world and give up actions and do just the minimum external activity possible, go internal and seek God there without interacting? So this path is called the path of nirriti. Riti, right? Remember yogas, chitta, riti, nirodha. A riti is a whirlpool of activity. Nir is also a negation. So nirriti means no activity. He says, should you take the path of nirriti, or should you take the path of work and devote your work to the Supreme, and in that way get free, which is called the path of parity, which is with action. So we're all practicing yogis here. What is your opinion? Is the path of parity, meaning the path of actions devoted to God, better? Or is the path of nirriti, giving up actions to a minimum and seeking God within, without acting in an external world, better? What do you guys think?
The one giving out actions to other people. I can't remember any of the names.
No, of course not. But we're going to post this online so you can look at it again. So that's the path of parity, the path of action. Why? Tell me your name again. Or nirriti.
Oh, actually. Is there one that's both?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Both.
Both is best. Exactly. And they're making a debate about it. Everyone's nodding. Everyone agrees both. Both at the various times. But say if you had to choose one. Say if you was one. Which would it be?
Oh, I'd do the within.
You do it within. Anyone else?
Swadhyaya.
Meaning?
Self-study. I do it. It depends on the individuality of each one.
Nailed it. It depends on, and so I agree. And at times you might have to be external, at times you might have. So reality, both. But what he's saying is, this is where he goes further though. He says, Krishna goes, I used to love it. He goes, some say that the path of nirriti is better. Some say that the path of parity, with action, is better. And Krishna says, so he's talking about on a whole, which is better. How about that? How about this? Just on an average, is it better to be a yogi, go renounce the world, or is it better to work in the world for God, as God directs you? Krishna says, my opinion concurs with the latter. Meaning, I opine that it is better to work for God than to artificially renounce all action. And then he says, because all human beings are born with inclination for some type of work anyway. And nature impels you to action anyway. And so I would say better to take this natural flow and devote it to the divine in order to reach me than to simply renounce the world. Although, of course, he's going to acknowledge, there's other times where he says renounce the world, go within, etc. But he's saying, on the whole, he says, better the path of action. And then austerities, he goes further. He's like, better to do austerities, perform austerities for God. And then he gets poetic. He says, ceaseless does the wind blow, and ceaselessly does the sun rise. He goes, Indra, the king of heaven, attained his exalted position through austerity and work. And this is true of all the principal gods. And he says, I myself am the supreme Godhead, so I have no duty. But I myself work just to set an example for the rest of existence. Because if I failed to work, the universe would fall into disarray. And so if you fail to work, your life will fall into disarray. Your mind will fall into disarray. So he says, best is the path of work and austerity, but giving up the fruits of that work to him, so that you're not bound by the karma. So work for God, and that's the quickest way to release and to perform austerities. So here, let me end the austerity talk with another story. So austerity means fire, right? Burning. Dude, did I tell this story before? I did. I'm going to retell it because no one remembers any of this. There was a group of women in a Bible study. They came across a Bible verse, Malachi 3:3. And it said, and he will sit, meaning God, he will sit as a purifier and a refiner of silver. So the ladies was like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And one lady said, hey, well, I have a silversmith near my house. I'll go check him out, see if I can observe his process, and maybe I can get some insights into his Bible verse. They were like, cool, report back to us. So she goes to the silversmith. She asks, hey, can I observe your process? He's like, sure. And he's like, and he explains it to her as he goes along. He said the first thing about purifying silver is this: nothing. It never starts pure. You almost never find just pure silver. It's always mixed in with something. So first you have to go through a gross process of getting the silver out of the ground. Then you have to separate out the impurities by heating it, because the silver will clump together. Have you noticed? So let's take that in real life. Difficulties. Is that everyone knows that people show their real true colors under difficulty. Martin Luther King said, the measure of a man is not where he stands in times of comfort or ease, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. That's when you see what people are made of. So, and people will join together, right? You can join together for various reasons, but when pressure comes, they're going to really join with people like them, right? Meaning the people who give up are going to be together. People who go on. And it's going to be few who rise. So as the silver will come together as the impurities are pulled out. But of course some impurities remain. So he said, so I have to keep the silver in the fire until the impurities are all out. And he goes, however, if I keep it too long, the silver itself will be burned. So I always have to keep my eye on it, even though I'm the one who put it in the fire. And then she said, well, how do you know when it's pure? And he said, well, that's easy, when I can see my reflection in it. So that is our teaching on austerity and how God puts us through difficulties for our own purification. And how God himself says, the best way to return to me is to always think of me and to work for me and devote all your actions to me. Cool. Which leads us to Ishvara Pranidhana. And we'll end with this. Actually, here, what I'll do is, can you hand me one of those nature things? Thank you. This is my book. Promoting a little bit. Actually, this book, I wrote it in India, and I was on like a 2-year, you call it sabbatical. And these were my questions to Goddess Saraswati. I'm like a channel, and I had questions about life. I wanted to know, what is love? What is truth? What is faith? And one of the questions that I needed to know, or not even, it's actually, sometimes they weren't questions, sometimes they were actually directives. She'll be like, okay, let me talk to you about surrender. And so I'm actually going to read what I got. And some of it's me, but it's written in form of poetry and prose. But I want to check out surrender. Then we'll go. Actually, it just comes to me. But let me ask you guys. And it doesn't have to necessarily be the Godhead all the time, right? Usually when we're talking about surrendering, we're talking about something in our lives, right? Yeah? How many people find surrender? And it's not like that we want to surrender to everything, right? Like, there's things that we want to fight against. There's things we definitely need to fight off of us. But when it's time to surrender, and we know it, how many people find it hard? Me too. Kevin, what do you find a hard time surrendering to?
With my work, and I think I've come to a dead end, and yeah, it's hard for me to move on. I've been doing this for 14 years, and I question it, and I'm not happy with it, so it's time to move on, but there's so much that I've developed there, so it's also difficult to let go. Is that relevant to?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else want to talk about surrender?
Going through a marriage that is ending and having to surrender to that.
If you let go, what's for you will either stay or return. Right? And so letting go, you can't fail. You can only fail if you're actually pushing something away that you're meant to have. Like that's, you know what I mean? That's a different thing. But when you let go, what happens is what's yours is going to be there. Right? And then you will let go of what's not. So I think a lot of what we're talking about surrendering is actually just letting go. And it's also trust, right? When I was listening to you speak, Kevin, you know what it is? It's hard to surrender because you're surrendering to the unknown. It's like giving up the known for the unknown. Raise your hand if you like that. You like it. You enjoy it?
I'll just find out.
No,
No, it's hard, but at the end it's easier. It seems so hard, but the end thing is actually so much more pleasant than not surrendering. So I like it in a way that it's, you know.
Okay.
But doing it for yourself is what makes it good. Because giving up something that you know for something you don't know, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, like that is a disaster.
Give me an example of what you're talking about.
So I just left my corporate pharma job for this journey, which sounds crazy to people, but my corporate pharma job ended me in inpatient for alcoholism. So talk about surrendering. It took me to a place that once I surrendered, I had no other option. It was death or surrender. I chose surrendering. It was easy for me because I don't want to die. But the end was sad. So I had a choice of continuing on my bad path, and I had to look at what made me so unhappy, and I had to look deep inside and really be truthful with myself, because I no longer wanted to live that way. So I did it for the correct reasons. I made ideals. What are my ideals? I didn't pick specific things. And my ideals were helping people, finding a better way of life, surrendering to my higher power, things like that yoga honestly embodied. And so becoming on this journey was a lot more, like I said, than Austin does, because a lot of AA embodied, like a lot of the teachings in AA are actually mirrored off of this. I did not know that till I got here. And the steps allowed me to have a spiritual awakening, which I now understand because this all makes sense to me. So, that is what I mean. And by choosing exactly what I wanted, not what somebody else wanted for me. Because 95% of my life I hated because I wanted 5% ego-based. When I tell you I'm a pharmaceutical rep and everyone's like, oh my God, you're so successful and you make a ton of money. I hated 95% of my life. I had to look at why am I doing these things, and it was ego-based. So let it go.
That's good. And you're right. Isn't it like one of the tenets of AA that you have to surrender to a higher power? Can you tell us that? What is the exact thing? What does it say?
You do have to surrender. It's like one of the first 1 to 3 steps is you have to admit you're powerless over alcohol and there's something greater than you that will take your desire to drink away. Once you do that, what Mimi had taught us is like, to become a monk, you have to clear up all your debts. So in the 4 and 5 are writing, you're admitting everything to a human being, all your wrongs. And guess what? Step 10 is then you have to go make amends to all those. You have to clear up every single debt. And my sponsor was so tedious. I had to contact people from like 20 years ago sometimes, 13 years ago. It is hard to go back to somebody that they may be 95% wrong in this situation, but you have to take responsibility for 5% and say, I was wrong. And it is the most freeing thing. So you have to clear up financial debts, you have to clear up emotional debts, all these things to be free. Attachments. You have to clear that up. And the piece that I got from doing the steps, and I have to continue to work at it, and your sponsor, kind of like your guru, is supposed to like slap your hand and be like, sorry, you don't get away with that. And I think for me, why it was so clear and happened so fast is because mine's like a tangible thing. I can't drink alcohol, and you can't be free from the desire to drink. A is not fixing your alcoholism. A is fixing your unmanageable life. My life was manageable before I became an alcoholic. I just drank because my life was unmanageable. People associate my life was a mess because of alcoholism. Once you took it away, my life still was unmanageable. It still was shitty. I had to practice these things. I had to practice all of these things in order to get me to a place that I decided to come to Bali. And now I get to use it for my life. Because I can't, like AA, I couldn't really like incorporate into my life other than keeping me into a community that believes these same things, but I can't make it a career or whatever. So like I said, coming here was exactly what I was looking for. I just didn't know it existed. I just thought yoga was like, I liked the lifestyle of yoga, but I didn't know about this. So it's like coming together very nicely. So yeah, I'm coming out the closet spiritually. If that makes sense. Does that answer your question about?
Yeah, no, that was epic. Actually, you know what is it's amazing how AA actually incorporates, like, I call it integrated spirituality, which is just truth that manifests everywhere. So in terms of paying back your debts, actually here, I don't know, 3 people here have had sessions with me. Did you hear what she said about responsibility and cleaning things up? Like, aren't my sessions like all about that? Because you know what? You can't get over it, right? You can like massage it, right? And you know what she said? She used the word clean it up. Saucha. It's energetic, emotional cleanliness, right? You have to clean it up. And then also responsibility. You take responsibility for your 5%. If you guys heard me say, like, my practice is, say if someone criticizes me, I scrutinize the criticism for even a morsel of truth. If it's untrue, then I reject it whole out of sight. I might get mad about it. But if there's even a little bit of truth, you want to draw that out so that you can improve, right? And so I got goosebumps because also, you know who else talked about that? Going back and paying your debts is 2 things. I do a meditation, I teach a technique called Ho'oponopono. It's the Hawaiian practice of forgiveness and reconciliation. You see a reduced version which says, thank you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, or something like that, something like a verse. And which is cool, it's a nice summary, but it's not the in-depth summary. The real in-depth summary was first you call it as 12 steps, not just 4. You call in the divine, it's 9 to 12, however you want to categorize it. The first thing you do is you call in the divine. In the traditional Hawaiian practice, you call in the divine and you ask for higher assistance. We have a problem, right? Me and you are beefing, and we need peace. And you know what? We need a higher power to intervene, Then after you've called in a higher power, you know what the next stages are? Confession. Not blame. Blame ain't even in there. Right? It's confession. I did this. I did that. Then it's before you even ask for forgiveness. The next one is recompense. You make it up. You say how you're going to do more good than the evil you did. How are you going to pay this person back more than the good they gave you? You have to go beyond. You know why? Because you don't want to be aimed for equal payment and have it be less. You go beyond. That's how you write your account. This is a practice in Ho'oponopono, traditional Hawaiian spirituality, and it's epic. It works. And then also, Carlos Castaneda. Anyone ever heard of him? He's an author. He wrote The Teachings of Don Juan and many other books. He's a Mexican shaman, and he's being trained by his Mexican shaman teacher. And I do this in my sessions a lot. I do what's called a recapitulation, in which you go over the details of your life and fine-tune so that you remember them, you recall them, things come out. But he also said, a warrior traveler, and that's what he described shamans as. He said, a warrior traveler pays her debt elegantly. And so he had him go back to everybody in his life that he'd ever harmed or whoever did him a good. He had to make up the harm and he had to repay the good before he could be initiated as an actual, I don't know if he would be a shaman master, but you know what I mean? It's a level of initiation. And it's amazing. So like you know what I like about it? It's truth. And then the yogis say, everybody's saying the same thing when it's effective. Call in the divine first. Pay your debts back. Take responsibility. Clean it up.
Just two things. Number step 11 is meditation. And number 3 is checking your ego at the door. We call it running the show.
Checking your ego at the door.
Yeah,
That sounds
I
brilliant.
had to read number 3 every morning. So it reminded me that I don't know anything and maybe you should stop and listen. That I don't know everything. My ego has to be redefined. So stop and listen. Check it. Stop running the show, because me running the show is chaotic. It may work for me. It doesn't work for everyone else.
Rumi said, you've been stony for so long. Try something different. Surrender. He said, look at the earth and how, it's pounded, you know what I mean, by rocks and rain. He goes, and it just takes everything. Is the earth worse for giving in like that? Of course, he lived 700 years ago. Now we have to be like, yeah, Rumi, she's worse. But the point is, 700 years ago, okay. Anyway, let's read about surrender and we'll go. Sound good? Okay, surrender. Surrender in actuality is the only means to God. What we are trying to return to everything that we think we are, that we think we have, to its one actual source. All other acts of spirituality which appear to involve acts other than surrender are our attempts to gain control of the disparate coverings on the soul, so that we can then surrender them all to God without them dragging us away again. So I repeat that. It says, all other acts of spirituality which appear to involve acts other than surrender. Meaning, our practice should be surrender. And in fact, I'll say this, you know what, after practicing all this intensely, literally, at this point, that's mainly what I do. I check in and I surrender. You know what I mean? Actually, these ladies are with me frequently. Don't I do that? I ask and I obey. And that gets me through. After all of these practices, that's really my practice, is I ask and I obey. And so any other act beside that are just our attempts to gain control of the coverings on the soul, the subtle bodies. Everything else is just for us to gain control of the mind, ego, and emotions and body so that we can surrender them to God without them dragging us away from God. Does that make sense? So the very purpose of a yogic practice and self-control practices are to surrender. Spiritual surrender is not simply accepting defeat at the hands of God, at the hands of power, at the hands of fate. Defeat is a material concept. There's never any defeat for those who are aware of and accept the actual nature of things. The term Saranagati explains the nature of spiritual surrender. Saranagati means having shelter as the final goal. Let me explain that. Actually, you know what the term also, there's actually multiple terms for surrender in Sanskrit, but one of them is Sharanagati. Sharanagati. So Sharanam, I talked about this in one class. Ashram. Does anyone remember if you were in class once I said the definition of an ashram? This is interesting trivia if you don't know. Sharanam. Anybody heard the song Ganesha Sharanam, Sharanam Ganesha? Anyone heard that in Kirtan before? Have you, Julia? Mimi, have you ever heard that in the Kirtan? Okay. So Sharanam means we take shelter of. And ashram, which comes from the same root, means place of shelter. Sharanagati means having shelter as our goal. And that's another word for surrender. So why do we surrender? Because we want shelter. And he says, Saranagati involves several realizations. One, this I cannot gain freedom without truth. Two, truth is the source of both this I and that which binds and confuses it. In short, truth is the source of everything. Three, this I can only reach the truth of the self through merger, which is beyond that. Through merger with that, which is beyond bondage, ignorance, and illusion. Meaning you can only merge with your true self if you merge with that which is beyond these illusions in the first place. 4, merger with that is only possible through surrender. And 5, that thing to which we are surrendering is love. It is truth and it is everything. All those who really want the whole truth will realize the last truth. You are that to which you are surrendered. Surrender is the act of an old soul giving itself what it really wants, what the ego may not yet want, and what the mind does not understand. Surrender is the act of an old soul giving itself what it really wants, what the ego may not yet want, and what the mind doesn't understand. Surrender involves only one being, you. And as I was learning the truth that God is real, farther and farther away was I pushed from all the comforts in this world until my back was against the wall. My lover took away everything I had repeatedly. Unable to hold on to anything, I finally surrendered my whole self to her. And now I sit on that same wall and watch as she rises, the soul of the sun, giving light to the world, opening me up just like a flower. You anyone get that? He said, my lover, God, pushed me further and further away from all the comforts of the world until my back was against the wall. She took away everything I had repeatedly, until finally, unable to hold on to anything. I kept trying. I surrendered my whole self to her, the divine. And then after that surrender, now I sit on that same wall and I watch as my lover rises, the soul of the sun giving light to the whole world and opening me up like a flower. Thank you very much. All right, nice to have you guys in class. Awesome to meet you. We'll chat a little bit after. Let's end the class with 3 ohms. Thanks for staying extra.